Or is the shopkeeper cheating me?
Looks like the string is very strong and so is that tongue of yours.
Hi, can you please mute your audio, please?
Well, he is. He tried to take from his kite, and if I do not win the competition with him, I promise you, Dad, I won't give him a single penny.
So what do you win or lose?
Well, what else could it depend on, Papa?
Well, yeah, that might be important, but if I fly, I guess we would have if she wouldn't go on.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, Wale, we can hear you. Yeah, I'm guessing I can hear you.
Hello? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. And I believe
Oh, okay.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right then. I guess I can dive right into it. I'd like to say thank you once again for inviting me. It's always good to come to events like this and try and share a bit of what we think we know it and hear from more intelligent people as well. Um, I think when Abraham reached out to me, particularly in response to the article, I think I was deeply humbled that a lot of people read it. And so I was also very pleased when Yinka also reached out to me with quite a very difficult set of questions. And I would say, I hope that by the end of this night, I'll perhaps be able to address most of these questions. I think from the lineup I'm trying to, so I think we have a bit of time over here. What I'll try to do is just so as not to waste everybody's time, just outline what I would tend to sort of go through. I think the first thing is to try and outline the nature of what is happening now. So I mean, every day we're all locked down at home and we're looking at markets, everything is going down. I think the first thing I'll try to do is try and outline those shocks. And then in response to that, what do I think the Nigerian government can do to try to mitigate those shocks? How does these shocks also affect us as individuals? What sectors would be impacted? And then what are the investment options for people in these difficult times? I'll just start right away with what we're seeing. Nigeria is facing two very big shocks. One is to our biggest export, which is crude oil prices, and the other is more on the health side, which is basically this COVID virus that's everybody globally. For the oil price shock, I think the important thing is and both shocks are coming at a time when we're least prepared for them, because on the health side, Nigeria's health sector is likely unable to be able to handle if we see anything close to what's going on in some countries. On the economic side as well, economic buffers, fiscal buffers are very thin, very thin. So we are unprepared, unlike in 2016 and 2009, we are very, very unprepared for this shock. So it's very easy for anybody to say that the impact will be positions. What do I think? How do I think? I think the first thing where I like to characterize this is, I mean, we all know about what's going on in Q1. Oil prices have plunged they've effectively dropped by more than half where we came into the year at. And just to cast our mind back, a decade ago, oil prices easily were $100 a barrel. Today, we're after 2014, 2016, we saw a reset in crude oil prices to somewhere between 50, 60, sometimes $70 a barrel. And now we're seeing another big reset downwards again to levels that are half of where we were. I mean, looking at the crude oil price history, much longer time series of crude oil price, you see these levels were at are pretty much levels you saw in the 90s, 80s, very depressed levels. And for Nigeria, we've gotten addicted to crude oil prices at much higher levels. So because crude oil is such a big share of our exports, we in between 2008 and 2014, we had pretty much adjusted and we're living life like crude oil price were going to be 100. Now, during the 2014 to 2016 economic crisis, we've been able to do a bit of adjustment, but with our policy responses, we didn't adjust fully to that. We didn't adjust fully to the reality that oil is no longer a luxury. It's increasingly going to be more a necessity, to use the economic sense of it. And so again, we are also here again, and there's another shock, and again, we are going to be forced to act to readjust. The biggest side I see is, from an economic standpoint, for us to characterize this, we'll see a return of what economists call the twin deficit problem. So the fiscal side, we'll see deficit. On the external side, we'll also see a very big imbalance as well. The external deficit is perhaps more important. So the current account deficit is perhaps more important because that ultimately tends to feed through to everything else. Depending on how conservative you are, or how say optimistic you are, I mean, the deficit could be anywhere north of $10 billion. That's if you're very optimistic. If you're very pessimistic, it's a number that is likely going to be north of $20 billion. That's where the current account. So we have an external imbalance of anywhere between 10, north of $10 billion. If you're very optimistic, and if you're pessimistic, that number is more likely north of $20 billion. And we need to plug that. We need to find some money from somewhere to be able to. So that's the hole in our external account that either our reserves will need to adjust by, or we will need to find a way to use a combination of our adjusting our reserves, or at least raising some external financing, or at least adjusting the currency by as well. Now, on the fiscal side, the big point with the fiscal deficit is, depending on how you look at it. I mean, CBN says last year Nigeria's fiscal deficit was north of 4 trillion. I think if you're very optimistic, you could also say yes, the deficit is likely going to be north of 4 trillion, because the government is likely going to come out and say, I mean, their deficit is probably going to be 3 trillion or something around 3 trillion. But the real deficit, and this just excludes what goes on at state level. At state level, you adjust the imbalance at state level, where a lot of Nigerian states rely on what they get from the center. It's even an even bigger problem, because you're looking at a very, very big imbalance across. And so, characterizing on the external side, we have a very large deficit we're looking at, and on the fiscal side as well, the government also has a very large shortfall in its projected spending, and the shortfall is coming at a time when the government needs to spend a bit more to fight this coronavirus, which is the health shock. I mean, we'll need to raise our health spending to GDP over the next 6 to 12 months to try and manage this crisis. So, and then in addition to that, you also need to come on, because you're also going to be locking things down. You also need to come with some measures to at least placate people whilst they are staying at home. Governments are talking about distributing food and things like that. All those things are not free; they cost money. And so, the shock is coming at a time when the government is not in a position to be able to do much. And I think what happens depends on the policy choices our policymakers decide to take. If they decide to take policy choices based on fear, then more likely we'll be back to where we were in 2016. But they decide to take policy choices based on being upfront about the fact that, look, we are going through a difficult period and it requires sacrifices from everybody. And I guess we'll probably be able to manage better. But if they go back to the same defensive mindset of trying to assume we can manage, or just maybe one or two things, some cuts or small cuts here and there, and then you hope to wriggle through, then it's going to be a difficult time. How do we manage it? What policy choices are available to the government now? Economics, I think I remember from my master's day, my lecturer used to say, you should try not to tell people what they should do, but give them the choices such that they then decide the choices that they have. What choices are available to the government? the biggest choice, because the big problem we face today is we have a shortfall in dollars. We need to find somewhere to get dollars from to at least still keep everything stable. Whenever countries go through current account balance, shocks to their current or balance of payment crisis, what they typically do is they raise money, external money, Eurobond, very large Eurobond programs, or they borrow effectively. You have to borrow from somewhere, and USD. That's what we would have to do. That's the first line of option for us. But well, I'll come to this later, but I think the main thing just to realize is we need to borrow a large chunk of money over a short, we need to borrow a large chunk of money, very large, north of $10 billion, I would say, if you're conservative, if you're just conservative, you need to borrow to plug that external deficit. Now, would the government, so the first option is issue a Eurobond. But unfortunately for everybody now, Eurobond markets particularly appear to have frozen. If you look at yields on Nigerian instruments, you're looking at yields very high levels. The January 2021 Eurobond is currently trading at 14%, which is interesting because the 1-year Treasury bill is also trading much lower than that. If you have a Nigerian paper that is maturing in June, that's the January 2020, the July 2021 paper is in single digits. So it's pretty telling you that foreigners are very, very wary about taking or extending credit to Nigeria. That's in the Eurobond sense. So most likely the commercial option of borrowing money may not be available to Nigeria. What other option is available? There's the going to the IMF and the World Bank option. Everybody today is currently going there because I believe the IMF was saying that over 80 countries are currently at their window trying to raise some form of financing. But given Nigeria's history, that suggests we are unlikely going to do that because Nigeria historically, as bad as the structural adjustment program was, Nigeria didn't take an IMF loan, which is amazing. We just didn't take it. We didn't take quite. We literally stayed as much as possible away from the IMF. And I think politically, out of fear, our leaders will continue to think that way. That let's not take. But I think that's probably an option, and it's probably a more sensible option. But as I said, I don't think it's something that we will be exploring actively. Now, the other options are, since you're not borrowing externally, you would have to somehow find a way to wriggle yourself. And so most likely you would see the central bank at least try to manage the situation. And they've been forced to do a bit of devaluation, even though the governor pretty much said he wasn't going to do that. Unfortunately, he's pretty much been forced to do the devaluation. Whether that's enough, I think the 4% devaluation, that's in the IME rate, 15% in the official rate, it's difficult to see, but the way global markets are, I don't think 4%, the 4% devaluation would be able to pacify a lot of investors. People are looking for to see now, most likely not of 400 now before you find a bit of people being confident. And the reason is because Nigeria is an oil exporter and also an oil exporter in a very difficult position. Your prices are low, and importantly, you're also struggling to sell volumes. Today, crude oil prices are at $24. Nigeria's crude oil price is being sold at a discount to Brent. So I think between yesterday and tonight, it's probably $20, $21 a barrel. So we are in an even difficult position given the way things are. So we're probably doing much worse than most other countries that are oil exporters. And importantly, we don't have the fiscal buffers. Russia and Saudi Arabia both have large excess sovereign wealth funds that they can draw down on to sort of try and handle or manage this lower price environment. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately. So I think for us, the options are do a Eurobond that's not available, go to the IMF, which is feasible, but I don't think we will do. So if we're not doing those two options, then it means the government needs to find somewhere local to at least raise that money from. Most likely they will have to borrow a bit of that locally, maybe via issuance of bonds and things like that. Or they could do what they've always done in recent years, which is borrow from the central bank, borrow from central bank, and that's effectively the central bank monetizing their deficit by printing more naira. The disadvantage of that is what we've seen today, which is that monetary policy has virtually, I don't know, I think the word used is I don't know what it is anymore. It's broken effectively. Central bank is trying to signal easing and tightening at the same time. That's because they have this big problem on their balance sheet, which they are unable to rectify. And so because of that, policy becomes, you're not able to use your normal tools to drive policies, to drive variables towards where you intend them to be. The only thing they have now, which they can do perhaps, is offering foreigners bills. But foreigners from the sell-offs we've seen in automobiles in over March, that tells you not many foreigners are confident in central bank's ability to be able to manage things. What do I think they should do? I think, which was the subject of my article, is pretty much leaning towards the IMF option, but not doing it explicitly, because politically Nigerians are always reluctant to go back to the IMF because of our history with social adjustment program. But for an IMF program in particular, what are the IMF conditionalities that countries are typically always worried about? The IMF typically would always say, okay, we'll give you money, but you must comply with these conditionalities. Now, in 1985, Nigeria also faced the same scenario. What did we do? I think it was under IBB. IBB decided to do the difficult program. So it's okay, the IMF said you should do it. He did those things, but he didn't take the loan. So he did the very difficult thing. So what we can do sometimes is, what are they asking us to do? More often than not, they will ask us to devalue our currency. We've already done that. We've not done that fully, but we've shown that we can do it if we want to do it. They'll most likely ask you to take away fuel subsidies. Today, it's easy to do that. We've already done that as well. They most likely ask you to ensure more cost-reflective tariffs. Today, they suspended the electricity tariff program. Well, at least they have a program in place, so it's not as if it doesn't exist. So, I mean, if you look at it, the government has taken a bit of steps, which suggests, they are probably in the direction of, some of the difficult things the IMF would ask you to do, you're already doing them. So why do you then need to say you're afraid of going into an IMF program? If you're already doing the difficult, you're already making difficult steps, you're already doing difficult decisions, you're already taking those difficult decisions today. The only reason why we're doing that is if our policymakers are thinking based on fear and not out of, is based on fear and not out of looking at the problems, looking at the problems we're seeing and wanting to address those with courage. But we're thinking more at place of fear of, oh, they will ask us to devalue. They ask us to devalue 50%. They ask us to take very difficult decisions that we may not be able to take. But I would say we can design a program today such that we ourselves take those very difficult decisions that they will likely ask us to take. Not in the extent they would ask us to take, but at least if we can show that we're serious about taking some of those big decisions, and we already are. Like I said, we are removing fuel subsidy, we are allowing the Naira weakening. We're doing some of those decisions, and if we can show them that we're taking some of these very credible decisions, then maybe they will be willing to extend this money. Maybe, just maybe. But if we're not willing to do that, which I don't think so, because I think the government will most likely, and central bank, the policy systems we are pushing are more unorthodox approaches, more likely will continue on this path of unorthodox economics, and let's see how that experiment lasts as well. As history has always shown, we always tend to be left much more deeper in the headaches that started out as. What do I think this does for the economy this year? I think the economy this year, more likely, is very easy to see us going into a recession, because the oil sector, more likely, if oil prices stay this low, production will be challenged. It will be very difficult to maintain production of over 2 million barrels per day. Some production might come off, so the oil sector might go back into recession. For the non-oil sectors of the economy, with the FX squeeze that's currently going on, if the FX squeeze deepens, you find more companies in the manufacturing and the services space struggling to get dollars, and obviously their output will become under strain. Now, the corona element is you have other sectors in the economy, construction, trade. Because of the lockdowns that are currently going to go on board, you find a lot of activity as well within the trading sectors. Construction activity will generally grind to a halt, because you can't be building houses if you are in quarantine. you can't be driving across cities if cities are in lockdown, essentially. So you find a lot of activities. Also in the services space, quite a number of companies, I know a lot of companies that rely on people coming to their offices every day. Restaurants, businesses that rely on people just showing up. Now, if you don't have people showing up, then there's really nothing you can do. You get transportation, people aren't traveling by air, people aren't traveling by road. So the whole of it just suggests that if things stay like this for 6 months, then it's easy to see Nigeria's economy largely moving into a recession. And what sectors do I think will do very well? Most likely the health sector, primarily because you're seeing a bit more injection of money into it. Capacity should expand. You also see, today we're using Zoom for this conversation. I think ICT, the ICT sector will see, particularly on the data side, a lot of people will more likely, because people aren't able to move around, will more likely talk more on phones, will more likely use internet during this period relative to any other period. So I think those two sectors will probably do well. Where do I think as individuals, what happens to career prospects? What happens to us as individuals? The biggest lesson I think we've learned in Nigeria is if you're earning Naira is that every 3 or 4 years, Naira gets devalued. So whatever savings you have, whatever income level you have in USD terms, is your purchasing power in USD terms is obviously going to weaken. So I think that's always where the biggest shock is. Naira has already moved already this year. So, I mean, depending on how far it moves, if you use the parallel market, if you say in parallel market terms, we've already lost about 10, our salaries have, or income levels have already reduced in 10% in USD terms. And I think that's always where the biggest shock is. Second line of shocks for individuals is companies. A lot of companies are currently having difficult budget discussions now, because more likely you came into 2020 with a budget and it looks less likely that you're going to achieve that budget. So if your revenues are unlikely going to be met, companies are going to start looking for ways to explore trimming back or cutting back on budgets. And the biggest the biggest item often in cost is human cost, it's personnel cost. So now maybe we might see, particularly for those areas where people feel are not necessary. So as always, it's always good to be on the side of being important or indispensable. Finance, well, let's see how it goes. But I mean, the last financial crisis as well in 2016, you also saw a lot of companies also in the financial sector also trim headcounts, trim jobs as well. There's also that risk as well. What do I think individuals should be doing now? I think the biggest thing you should be doing now is learning how to work remotely. So I think the world is going to change after this whole coronavirus pandemic. One thing the world is going to do is move more towards remote work. And clearly, there are a lot of jobs that are in that line of work, particularly in areas such as computer programming and learning how to work with computers, generally remote type work. I think those will be the jobs that would increasingly become in vogue as companies adjust to what is likely. I mean, companies are going to start looking at this model more closely, less of a need for an employee to work. So more likely employees whose jobs don't require them to come physically to an office or things like that are more likely going to be in high demand than employees whose jobs rely on them working desk jobs or being physically present in offices. Job prospects, unfortunately, as always, every time there's a financial crisis, the financial sector is always in the line of fire. But I'd always say that there's always an opportunity, particularly in the last few years, we've seen very big changes because of what I would say is migration. A lot of Nigerians are moving outside of the country. So what you find is in the finance space, in particular, in the investment phase, you found a lot of experienced hands are pretty much left. So companies are essentially just using more, I would say, when I joined the industry, I was working in a team in research, and we were about five. We had a head of research. It was a full complement. And today, if I go around the major houses, you struggle to see teams with that number. And mostly it's not because of a financial decision. Well, partly is a financial decision, deficit gap as well. You don't have enough people who people feel are competent enough to be in those positions. So clearly, I think, as always, economic shocks in Nigeria will always drive more migration outwards. So more likely you find a lot more people willing to go outside, particularly the experienced hands willing to go offshore to try their hands. And this throws up opportunities for people who are coming right through the system. I think learning now more than ever before, there's that emphasis on being very, very savvy with manipulating data, large sets of data, being very knowledgeable with understanding the key things in finance, being able to build a financial model, being able to understand the company. Also, I think with Nigeria as well, because we're also going to be going through a economic crisis, being able to carry out deep macroeconomic analysis and be able to sort of say, okay, where do you think interest rates are going to? What should we be doing? Where do you think the exchange rate is going to? Would you advise us to take a hedge? Would you advise us to what segments of the yield curve should we be buying or selling? Things like that. So macroeconomic skills, understanding skills would also be in vogue as well. So Yeah, I think I've touched most points as well. I guess I can take questions now as well. If you have any questions with what I've said, you can ask me questions now.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Yinka Joseph. Thank you, Wale Okunrinboye. That was a lovely presentation. So, to everyone listening to this call, so you can drop your question in the chat box, or you raise your hand, then I'll allow you to speak via the audio. Everyone is on mute at the moment. So once you raise up your hand and I can see it, I will unmute you to ask your question. But before we do that, my first question to the presenter is, in your own opinion, I've read a couple of global articles that have spoken about the recovery path for economies across the world. They've attached letters to this recovery. You have the U shape, the V shape, the W shape recovery, the L shape recovery. So, in your own opinion, what do you think Nigeria's recovery from this COVID-19 pandemic and oil price crash is going to look like? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I think most recoveries, however you look at it, is always a U or V shape, but it depends on how long the curved element is or the curved portion is. For us, recessions tend to be more longer because, how do I say, depending on our policy responses. So in 2009, we had a global financial crisis and Nigeria recovered very quickly. I mean, that's because one, we had very large fiscal buffers, $20 billion in what we call what was effectively our sovereign wealth fund then. And also the very speed with which they devalued. I mean, it was in November and Soludo very devalued very quickly, So you did the decisions, you took the very difficult decisions very quickly. And so we're done and dusted with it. So, I mean, then you didn't have the second order impacts of the banking crisis, but I mean, those were also dealt with as well again, rapidly as well. So I think, and then fast forward to 2016, we had those $2-3 billion in the excess crude account, very low reserves. We had a very deep, more long-lasting crisis. For the better part of 2 years, we were effectively in crisis. It was only until 2017 before things began to sort of look up. But now compare and contrast that in 2017 and in 2016, we had started to become a regular Eurobond issuer. In 2008, we never issued a Eurobond. So we didn't even have access to the Eurobond market. In 2016, 2014, we had access to issuing Eurobonds. But again, because our decision making was, like I said, policy was drawn out of fear, not out of courage. Generally, we stuck in that recession for a long time. Now, this recession looks like it's going to be deeper because, again, we're at levels for oil we haven't seen before. And it looks like this level is going to be around for quite a while. I mean, now to put in context, how low can oil prices stay here? Unless you get a war, I think unless you get a war between some major oil exporters in the Middle East that takes off maybe 20 million barrels of supply or 30 million barrels of supply offline, then maybe you see a pickup in crude oil prices. Well, in the current scenario, we have a very huge backlog of inventory. In some parts of the US today, people are effectively exchanging oil for free, or they are telling you, just take my crude and I'll pay you for it, because you have a very huge glut. People are saying the the supply glut today is north of 10 million barrels, or some people say between 10 and 20 million barrels per day. Now, in 2016, when we went through the last oil price collapse, we're dealing with a oil supply glut of 2 to 3 million barrels per day, maybe max. Now we're dealing with many more times. So the oil price like to stay low, and not just stay low. For Nigeria, is oil prices staying that low means that, I don't know. I don't think our policymakers understand this. We are going back to levels we last saw in the 90s. We're not comfortably at those levels, and staying at those levels for a long time it means government revenue, government spending would have to shrink significantly. Like you need to see very big drops in government spending to be able to still keep the current things going, or at least to keep everything there. And that's not likely going to happen because a big part of government spending is salaries, interest expense, and you cannot say you are not meeting those obligations. So the solution really is to borrow a large amount or just nothing at all. Now, if our policymakers think the current scenario is maybe a 1 year thing and they will try and just manage it, they can do that. But if you don't think the current environment is more than a 1 year thing, or oil prices are going to stay this low for a while, then because the last time oil prices came down this low, they stayed there for the better part of a decade. I mean, oil prices stayed for a very long time. Throughout the 90s, oil prices were subdued, $20 on average, 20, at the $20 range. So the oil prices stayed at these levels for a better part of a decade. There's no how things don't get difficult for us because we are used to oil prices at much level. Our spending pattern, our budget spending pattern, our currency is built around oil staying at much level, higher level. So unless we adjust our import bill, or unless we adjust our the amount the government is spending or are spending, then it's difficult to see how we wriggle out of this environment. And if we stay in this environment, what's going to happen is, to mind this scenario, we need very tight monetary policy. You need the government cutting to the bone, things, and those things would mean economic activities stay depressed for a very long time. So I mean, the only thing is, if you're a praying person, pray for some resolution on the coronavirus. The coronavirus gets resolved quickly. Say we get a vaccine in the next 6 months. Maybe you could say 2 years out, the global economy should recover, because even if you get a vaccine, going forward, life is going to be different. Countries are likely going to introduce some form of yellow card that if you don't have this vaccine, you can't come here, or you have to go through tests to travel to each country. Travel will be restricted. So before you get a normalcy back in world economic activity, it will be a difficult time. So I think if we can get a vaccine or a cure, that helps sort things out. The other thing we also need is the Russians and the Saudi Arabians to come to some sort of agreement as to reducing output. If we don't get that as well, that also means things stay low for a while. How long? I think how long will be depends on what happens on the external side, and then also importantly is our policy response. I think at very minimum, what I was trying to model internally is maybe 1 or 6 months, 1 to 2 years. I would say let's mind for 1 to 2 years. Hello.
Oh, that's a long one. Okay.
Hello?
There's Mustafa Wahab. So you can ask your question now.
Hi, Wale.
Yeah, hi Wahab.
So yeah, I like what you said about the fact that we need yield sum of borrowings, which has more or less been my view over the past few months. Again, I understand that Eurobond market right now is not very conducive. Again, politically, we might not be inclined to taking loans from the World Bank or IMF. But what I struggle to understand is the part where you mentioned coming domestically to sort of raise that kind of borrowing that we need to solve that imbalances that we have right now.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello.
Wahab, I didn't get
Yes, Wale.
you. I didn't get you. Yeah, I lost you a bit. I lost you a bit just now.
Oh,
Yeah, I lost you a bit just now.
Okay. So I was saying that I like the fact that you mentioned that we need sizable borrowing to plug deficit that we're seeing right now. Domestic, but what I struggle to understand is the domestic parts. Yes, if we're able to borrow money domestically, we can solve that deficit, fiscal imbalances domestically. But I don't know how sizable domestic borrowing is going to help plug that external deficit portion, because I mean that's still a problem. If we're not able to borrow globally, how are we going to solve that current account imbalance that we have right now with domestic borrowing? I struggle to understand that part.
Okay. Well, we won't solve that problem. I think what will happen is, and that's what we did in 2016, we tried to, we said we didn't care about the foreign guys. We're not going to borrow offshore, and we're just going to focus on borrowing locally. And what happened was that pushed interest rates locally very high. And central bank, because you're not getting dollars, and we still need to import things, then had to go into demand, or what I call import demand suppression, whereby they just said, I mean, if you, we're not going to give you dollars. And so I think that was part of why the recession the last time was deep as well. So I think that's not it. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a policy solution, but it's not a solution that addresses the problem. You get what I'm saying? It's like saying you have cancer and you're taking Panadol. It just takes away the pain, but it doesn't solve the problem. So the government is going to do that option, but because they know and the reason why is because you can't issue a euro bond and you don't want to go to the IMF. So what do? Well, you stay locally and be borrowing whatever you need to do locally, and then people who want dollars, well, you give them in trickles, and you do what we did the last time, which is you ration, you pick who you are going to sell dollars to, and everybody else you just manage yourself. So that's just it. So, which would mean it's a choice that they can make, but it's a choice that would put us in more pain.
Okay, so lastly,
I'll just try and take a few questions. Okay.
So lastly, that domestic portion, I mean, when do you think we start right? Because I don't think these guys are really very serious about going to the capital market. I mean, today alone in the T-bills market, I think average stock yield was also, I mean, down by some basis point. I don't know, when do you see enough sort of aggressive borrowing from either T-bills or bond markets, go looking for?
Yeah. Okay. First thing is to demo issued the calendar recently, and what they said is basically they're waiting for the government to come up with their budget review. Once they're done with the budget review, then we'll see what the amounts they'll have to do. I'm suspecting maybe by sometime in April, they will most likely have what that number is and what they need to borrow locally. Likely, people have been saying that, okay, some numbers, they're looking at a deficit of, I think, 3 trillion. So a deficit of at least 3 trillion, if they do their usual split, local and foreign, that will mean that, I mean, you have to finance 1.5 trillion locally, 1.5 trillion on the offshore leg. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they can get 1.5 trillion offshore. Well, locally, we'll see. But I think if the deficit is 3 trillion, a large chunk of that will have to be local, because if you're not issuing a euro bond and you don't want to go to the IMF, it means you have to most likely lean towards the local leg of that. But I think let's just wait and see what the budget review comes out looking like as to what they need to do as to the amount of the fiscal deficit they are estimating, and then they will, how much of that. But I think whatever the fiscal deficit is, well, 1.5, the current deficit is about 1.5 trillion. If they take that to 3 trillion, they do their usual 50-50 splits, local and foreign, then I think pretty much that's probably you have an estimate of the size they will need. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll just take a few questions here. One guy says, okay. One guy says, what's your take on the reduction of fuel price by 14%, even though crude oil prices are down 70%? I think interpreting as their own take is that the NNPC can no longer afford to be so presently in the fuel, or rather before before March, NNPC was the sole importer of PMS. Now, how does NNPC pay for its PMS? NNPC pays for its PMS, the PMS imports from the crude oil sales it makes from selling crude oil. Now, crude oil prices are down over 60%. NNPC clearly cannot continue to be 100% importer of crude oil, and at the same time also be transferring money to FARC. So it's a question of them just picking which battle they want to fight. I think for them, they just figured out, look, we can't continue to be the 100% importer of crude oil, otherwise something is going to have to suffer of a PMS or that's something else. So what they decide to do, I think, is, okay, we need to find a way to get private guys to source for dollars and also bring the product in. So we need to get a way to incentivize private guys to come back into the import business. Now, how do you incentivize private guys to come back to the import business? The only way you can really incentivize them is to give them attractive margins on PMS sales. So in other words, make the PMS sales such that even if a private guy, I mean, today NNPC most like previously used to source that, or rather used to charge the price at the PPI bill 305. But a private guy most likely will not be able to get 305. He won't be able to get 360. He will more likely be getting much higher levels for crude oil for PMS imports. Maybe say 300, or maybe say well above 400, or maybe closer to 400. So if a private guy gets above 400, what price do you think will make sense for him to still be incentivized, or what margins do you think he gets? So if they have reduced PMS prices by the same magnitude they have done for crude oil, so crude oil prices are down about 60%. If they are done it by a similar magnitude, then because of FX, private guys simply won't be able to source moves, so we can't necessarily translate. So it's not immediate because the exchange rate has devalued from the 305 NFPC used to price PMS ads to 380. Yeah, there's been a movement in that price. You can't expect it to be a same linear 60% down in crude oil prices, 60% in PMS prices, because if we did that, then there won't be any incentive for private guys to go and source for FX and still bring in the product. So I think they've kept it there. I think the 123, 125 price is still incentive enough. If the FX situation deteriorates further to maybe 450, maybe that might not be much of an incentive for private people, and then maybe they'll need to adjust the price again. But I think for them also as well, they're trying to also show a proof of concept that, you know what, when oil prices came down, we brought it down, so that when oil prices, or if the exchange rate changes, well, they also say, guys, you know, we've been bringing it down, we're also going to take it up because exchange rate has changed. So I think the goal really is to try and get private guys in. They get private guys in, then at least private guys can take a bit of the pressure off NNPC having to be the sole importer, using all our FX to fund PMS imports, and at the same time putting money aside for FAC and all whatnot. I see a question here about the oil price will bounce back once a cure for COVID is found. Yeah. But what I would always say is that, so again, if a cure for COVID is found, you still have that rebalancing argument. So coming into 2020, everybody was always, so if you read a lot of analysts or forecasts for 2020, everybody was always worried about OPEC, because in December, when OPEC had the agreement to extend the output cuts till Q1, everybody was worried because previously OPEC used to extend for 6 months. Why Q1? And the Russians had always been saying, look, we're not going to go beyond 2020 with cutting output, that we're tired of it, we can't continue to do it. And so I think what happened in March was just a natural occurrence. And then unfortunately, COVID also came along. And so we have an even bigger problem now. So what needs to happen is the market needs to rebalance. Something has to happen on the supply side that needs to rebalance. Someone needs to stop producing food on the supply side. And what the Saudi and Russia have pretty much done is they think the only guys who haven't been cutting all along in the last 4 years are the Americans. And the Americans should make that adjustment. And so I think let's see what happens. American producers are trying to go into bankruptcies. If you do get a bankruptcy, I mean, American producers have added anywhere between 4 to 5 million barrels in the last 4 years. Some of that has to go out of the market to at least clear markets. Even if you do get a cure for COVID, it will take some time for economic activities to come back to normal. During that period, we'll have to deal with an inventory buildup that is huge. I think the NNPC CEO was saying that, look, we'll probably be in this for 5 to 6 months to clear. We'll probably need 5 to 6 months to clear the backlog of food that's just been out there that nobody's buying. So it's going to be a more gradual process. So, but let's see. But I think crude oil prices below $20 are unsustainable, because I mean, if you look at fund manager positioning, it appears like, look, it's more likely unsustainable below $20. So maybe we stay. I think what I've been forecasting for this year is we stay 25, 35, probably all steadies there. If a very bullish scenario emerges, we go to 40, 50. If there's a deal, 40, 50, yeah, we stay around there. Maybe next year, if economic activity picks up very strongly, then you see much scope for prices to move towards 50, towards 60. But for now, I think prices are likely going to be, just because we have a very huge buildup of inventory. Nigeria has 55 cargoes that are not being sold. How much do you think other countries also have? Angola has. By the time you accumulate everything up together, nobody's saying anything. So even if you do have a deal, it will take some time for that inventory to sort of clear out. And during that period, I mean, the physicals market for crude today is gone completely. As long as that market is depressed, it's very difficult for us to see some kind of quick quick recovery in prices. I think somebody says, how long do you think the central bank can keep the naira, keep defending the naira? How long do I think the central bank can keep defending the naira? I think they previously said they were going to wait till we get to $30 billion. So I think most people are trying to work out if we get $30 billion, how long does it take us to get to $30 billion? Maybe another devaluation happens below $30 billion, which is probably likely. We get another devaluation below $30 billion. Currently we're at 35 billion. We probably close April 34, 33, May 32, June you probably get to 30 or below 30, and I think if the current scenario remains, clearly you'd expect some other devaluation. That's if things don't get worse before then, because the parallel market appears to also be more likely will move, because I don't see how CBN would not try to manage or restrict dollar demand. A lot of banks are already sending out messages that, look, we're reducing how much dollars you can spend on a monthly basis. The longer that continues, the more pressure on the parallel market, particularly once these lockdowns get out of the way. Once you open the door for goods to start going around again, dollar demand comes back on. I think that just puts more pressure. How high we can go again? Fundamentally, most people say the naira is fairly valued around 400. If you look at the IMF, look at central bank, around 400, I think is probably fair. But related to what has happened, we've seen a over 60% drop in oil. If oil stays at those levels for a long time, I think we'll probably need more than 10% devaluation to get out of this. We're probably looking, probably somewhere between maybe everything settles, we'll probably end up at 450 most likely. Probably end up, because all revenues are down by, like I said, well above 50%. So if you're down by over 50%, the currency has only done a 4% adjustment, then something else needs to adjust to be able to balance out. A 4% adjustment in the face of a over 50% drop in crude oil is definitely not enough. You probably need to do a bit more. And the only thing that can stop that is if we borrow a large amount of money. If we get somebody who is willing to give us a large amount of money. If somebody comes to them and tells Nigeria, okay, you know what, I'll provide you a backstop of $30 billion today, then everything is settled, because the current account. But if we don't get anybody to that, we're just going to draw down our reserves, and the more we run down our reserves, the bigger the devaluation will be, because you find less and less people having confidence in whatever rate you say, whether it's fair value or whatever. People just not having any confidence in. How do I think the unemployment rate can be managed? Because people are going to lose their jobs. I think the only way to manage the crisis, because if companies aren't selling enough, if companies aren't generating enough revenues, then they need to cut costs. That's the only way. Or if they don't cut costs, then the companies themselves will be forced to go under. So I think in our case, the big point we always have is every year, because people are going to school, anywhere between 2 million people or 1 to 2 million people are coming to the job market every year. So unemployment rate just sort of seems on this auto response of, we're not creating that much jobs. So you still find there's a deficit between jobs being created and the amount of people that are going to the labor force. So I think that's always where the big problem is for us with unemployment. And until we come with a way to address that by opening up some new sector of the economy that doesn't require that much human capital in terms of people who have high degrees or advanced degrees, then it's difficult for us to bring down the unemployment rate. Are we really positioned to issue a Eurobond post-COVID? No, I don't think so, because for like I said, so if you look at where Nigerian Eurobond yields are today, we're being priced at 14% for just a paper that matures in 6 months. And until you credibly commit to find a solution, you find less people willing to back a Nigerian. It will be like what happened in 2016 again, because before people have confidence in your ability to repay, they want to see some level of policy adjustments or some kind of structural reform that improves your dollar earning ability. I don't think we've done that. We've done that yet, so I think it will be some time. Let's say maybe again, it depends on when COVID ends in 6 to 12 months. Maybe we'll probably need to wait 1 or 2, maybe one year out before we come to issue a Our USD borrowing is going to be very costly. Yeah, okay. Comments, I see comments. Okay, someone asked me a question on the stock market. What's my view on the stock market? For Nigerian stock market, I think I'm always a bit very emotional about it because I think the big problem we have here is you have these foreign guys who always sell, who are selling now because the Nigerian macro environment doesn't pay them. So because the Nigerian macro environment doesn't pay them, they're going to always sell. Because they're a big chunk of the market, it just means that the market would always be on a bearish scenario. And I think we've seen that the last decade, Nigerian equities more times have gone down. And the other reason is also because during periods when the economy goes down, the solution is to raise interest rates. So because we're always raising interest rates, we always find out that equities will always be out of vogue in a period when we get valuations are depressed, but equities always matter because interest rates are high. If government is borrowing a lot and interest rates there are double digits, it's always an easy argument to say I'll buy a T-bill or a bond than go and buy a stock. The other problem I think with our stock market is also from a dividend yield perspective, there's also the tax treatment people also apply. So you have a different tax treatment for dividends as against capital gains. So in that kind of scenario, the market punishes people who are long-term investors, people who are short-term guys. You pay zero capital gains tax, so there's nothing for you. So it tends to pay short-term traders. And so because you have foreigners who are always coming and going out and who are always worried about the macro issues, the market would almost most likely be bearish over the next 1 year. It's very difficult to see how the market lives, despite the fact valuations are rock bottom. It's always be difficult for that to happen. I don't know the state of the CBN's balance sheet, but what's the possibility of CBN raising rates on the home market and adjusting the FX rate to do that so that a hedged carry trade is attractive for FPI? Well, I think the CBN, the problem with the CBN as always is, well, they've gone so you've clearly described the problem the central bank has been facing, which is that they have a negative spread between how much they're selling almost at and how much they're lending to the federal government at. So this huge negative spread. If the central bank adopts the posture of trying to keep things the way they are, then I think all bets are off. They will offer foreigners as high, more likely they will have to offer foreigners something north of 20%, given where FX reserve levels are. As for hedging, I don't know the point of hedging. Well, hedging made sense previously with the NDFs, but the point now is if you have an NDF or you had an NDF on an OMO bill and you sold it, you most likely sold it at a price below 375. You most likely got the NDF at the price that told you I'll pay you 375 or the difference. No problem. The difference between the NDF, whatever NDF you got, and the I&E window today is the number around 380, 385. But at the same time, daily turnover at the I&E window has dropped significantly. So yesterday, I think we traded just $9 million in the I&E window. So clearly, there's not enough liquidity for everybody that wants to get out at any point in time. So most likely, there's a window. Now, if you're really desperate to get out, you have to go and pay over 400 naira. So you had an NDF, yes, but your NDF no longer pays you because, you could have gotten out at 385 or 400. So it's not been necessarily a profitable trade. So that's probably to pay us to come back. I don't know. I think since the central bank decided to hive the OMO market, I think one thing the foreign investor would have realized is once we saw oil prices spike in March, we saw OMO rates also sell off as well. So all the guys who bought OMO bills at effective yields of 14, 15% got out at 78%. They had to book almost 200 basis points in losses on those investments. So clearly, some of them are also used. So you got bond there and then also trying to get out as well. You also got bond on the FX side. I'm not too sure you find a lot of guys really confident in Nigeria without a big devaluation come back into Nigeria. I'm not too sure. I'm not really sure you find many takers. You still find, yes, the usual guys, but in terms of getting a large chunk of foreign investors willing to pile in here. I think the balance of risk is too much on the high side now. Yeah, for them is, and importantly again is a lot of people are stuck now. We have a lot of foreign investors stuck trying to get out, and so because of that, people who are stuck will never advocate for you. Never find people willing to relying on themselves to take themselves out. So, and that's the point that's capitalized now. So, I'm not sure you find a lot of foreign investors, even though you do that, willing to come back in. And importantly is that the OMO instrument today is really a foreign instrument. Banks, CBN has pretty much discouraged banks from buying it in local. So effectively, you're against Nigeria risk. So I'm not too sure you find many foreign investors willing to buy it, even though you offer them quite attractive returns. Which investment options for people? For locals, I think the best thing was always to do, as somebody will say, is to buy, is to always get USD exposure because it always pays over time. I think getting a Eurobond or getting some form of investment that gives you dollar exposure definitely would always be top of mind. Interest rates are such low levels now that, I mean, if you want to buy stocks, you can buy stocks, but you have to have a very long horizon to hold Nigerian stocks. If you don't have that, if your liabilities are not going to allow you to take that kind of long horizon, then of course there's really nothing you can do. You just have to stick with your fixed income, your low interest rate fixed income. If I was a foreign portfolio investor, would I touch Nigerian Euro bonds? The probability of mark-to-market loss on Nigerian Euro bonds is very high now because even in the US as well. So if you look at the US as well, triple B bonds in the US has moved out. So if you have even in the US, corporate bonds have moved out, then of course emerging market bonds will definitely move out. And for all emerging market bonds, they will definitely also move out as well. So for a foreign investor, if you are buying with prospect of price appreciation, well, you most likely be looking at taking very large losses. If however you're buying from a buy to hold perspective, so you want to buy a fixed income instrument 15%, I mean, like I said, the Nigerian Eurobond currently gives you about 2021 gives you about 14%. If you're willing to stay here, I don't think why you can't take 14% in USD is probably a very good return. Maybe 1, 2, 3 year Eurobond yields. Yeah, you should buy Nigerian Eurobond yields for 1 to 3 years. At least Nigeria's reserves won't go down to zero over the next 1 to 3 years. So at least you're sure that we're not going to see a default on the Eurobond. But if you're going to go out for the much longer Eurobonds, anything can happen between now and 2049. I mean, I don't know if you're willing to take that risk as well. But I mean, I think for Eurobonds, 1 year Eurobonds, 2 year Eurobonds, 2022, 2023, sure. I mean, you can buy it. If you're gonna sit and hold it to maturity, I mean, the yield makes sense, and you probably won't see. How long do I think for equity markets around the world to bounce back, especially in Nigeria? Globally, I think the US markets will do well because interest rates there are such depressed levels. So I think the US markets, there's always that room because rates are so low, the Fed is doing quantitative easing. There's a lot of room once the restrictions start to come off for US stocks to do quite well because valuations are so cheap now. For emerging markets and other advanced countries, for the wider emerging frontier markets, I think the first hurdle people have to face is the dollar hurdle. The US dollar has strengthened during this period. A lot of people are trying to rotate into cash, and so demand for dollars is quite strong. And so dollar has strengthened against most emerging market currencies. And so once people get a sense that USD strength is starting to taper off a bit, maybe you see some recovery to emerging markets. Point for Nigeria, however, is because of oil, we are likely not going to be one of those markets that will be favored unless oil prices recover. So if everybody else does recover, we will most likely be, that's if we recover at all. And our recovery is hinged largely to some bounce back in oil price, and not to 40, 50, but to maybe 60, 70. Like I said, maybe you get a war or something, you find oil prices go back up. I see a question from Flourish. How did crude oil prices exacerbate things in 2016? What were steps taken by CBN to get out of recession in 2016 with exchange rate and crude oil? And 2016, I think crude prices dropped 55%. Naira at the end of the day dropped by around 55% as well. So you never really run away from your fundamentals. Your fundamentals will pretty much always still have their way through. Central bank, did they do anything? I'm not sure they did. I think the only thing they did well, things got so bad that they just had to get good. I think that's the way I'll say it. And that's why we recovered and we didn't have a V-shaped recovery. We had a U-shaped recovery that's very long. So we only got back to growing at 2% after 4 years after the recession. So what they can do again is, again, like I said, is speed and courage. I mean, we need a lot of dollars. We need to go to people who can give us a large chunk of dollars on concessionary terms and then take some reforms. People always point to the Egypt example. Egypt did the same thing Nigeria did, but they devalued, went to an IMF program, got a large chunk of money that the IMF used, so they were able to handle their current account problems or their balance of payment issues. And after that, we took some reforms, and today their growth rates higher than we are, inflation rates lower than we are, and the currencies stabilized. So yeah, and also we had this huge wave of FDI into it as well. So I think for us is we've tried something that didn't work in 2016. Let's try something else this time. Someone asked, got S&P downgraded Nigeria's outlook 3-4 weeks ago, and now they've come to downgrade our ratings. This didn't happen during the recession. Do you think this will significantly investors or in Nigerian capital markets? The last crisis, so the last time around, Nigeria was knocking on the BB door. Now we're down firm to B. I think there's not much downside risk for us here because the only thing from here is C. That's the only thing from here. I don't think that will happen. I think we'll probably just stay here. From an investing perspective, B is junk. Anybody below triple B or where we are is junk. So I'm not too sure these things make much of a difference. Yeah, the only thing they do is maybe they make your, if you were to raise a euro bond, it would be very, very expensive. You find more, you probably pay a lot more for issuing a euro bond if your credit ratings are close to C, because fair to C just means you have to pay a high yield on a euro bond for people to take you seriously. S&P, I mean, we've hovered at this level. I think that's where we'll be. We'll probably hover at these levels for a while. Yeah, unless things get really bad, maybe reserve levels go towards $20 billion, and then people start getting worried about liquidity to pay Eurobond coupons or to pay principal maturities. I think that's the case. But the World Bank has said they're applying a moratorium on all concessionary loans to third world countries. That at least should reduce our Eurobond, our interest expense on foreign loans. So at least half of that book is we'll probably need to pay an interest on that for now. So maybe that helps us. Somebody asked a question on Dangote Refinery. It's going to be the largest earner of FX, even more than the FG. I'm not sure that is once it comes on stream next year. And this could be the final. Could it stabilize the exchange rate in Nigeria? Two things I always think is one question nobody has ever answered about Dangote Refinery and it's just a bit to understand how Dangote Refinery is set up in a free trade zone. So technically it's not in Nigeria. And also Dangote's refinery was financed largely using USD loans. So it's located in a free trade zone and was also financed largely using USD loans. So I don't see how well now we're deregulating. So maybe that gives us some hope. But the question is how credible will the regulation be in the face of an exchange rate blast? So Naira goes to say 450 or 500. Would we also be willing to raise the price? Would we be willing to raise the price? I think the discussion that needs to be had around how they will price PMS. Unfortunately for Dangote Refinery as well, crude prices are where they are now. So refiners are also taking a bit as well because, I mean, typically oil prices decline, but not so much. Refiners are probably fine. But now you're facing a very big glut also of refined output as well. So, I mean, interesting to see. Dangote Refinery is a free trade zone. He will also be competing with other crude oil refiners from all over the world. So he will have to be competitive as well. And that's why I said there's a big question we haven't asked in the room, which is how are we going to price PMS vis-a-vis to Dangote? Are we going to give him a concession so that he's able to give us cheaper? if you sell PMS, if you what you speak to people who in PMS, they say that look, how much do we save by not producing PMS here? Is it more than 10? Probably 10 to 10. I think the estimate I have historically was probably 11, was around 11 naira. So you don't the change you see is no more than 11 naira, whether you refine it here or refine it in Cote d'Ivoire or some other place. So is it really going to be a game changer? I mean, the only big change I see is yes, you see about a big reduction in your oil import bill. But oil import is actually going to price your invoice in USD. It just means that that $10 billion will be moved to him. Someone else that technically that's what will happen because he's been financed using loans, and those loans are to some of them are to Nigerian banks, and so yeah, it will be very difficult if the government doesn't ensure their IMX as commercially as possible. You're going to set up a chain link or a chain reaction of defaults across board. So I think it's an argument we haven't had, a discussion we haven't had, but I guess the closer we get to the final launch date, the more clarity we'll get on that front. So whether or not how we're going to price it, how it's going to be priced. Do I see the possibility of Nigeria not being able to meet our debt obligation? Most of Nigeria's borrowings today are in Naira, so sovereignty in Naira. The Nigerian government has sovereignty over Naira, so it's almost impossible for the Nigerian government to be able to default in its own currency because it can always borrow to repay those obligations in Naira. I mean, we had a bond that matured in February this year. The government is about 600 billion. In Q1, the government issued about 641 billion naira. So most of that money was used to repay that euro bond that was maturing. So I don't think we'll have that bond that was maturing. I don't think Nigerian government have any issues paying its naira debt. The worry, however, is what will happen to the USD debt if it continues to increase and our oil revenues don't improve over the near to medium term. Yes, that concern becomes a valid risk. But in the near term, I think we'll be able to easily pay. I mean, we have reserves of about $35, $36 billion. Government will be able to pay at least 2021. The government will be able to pay that. You'll also be able to service interest expense on those ones easily from their cash positions. I don't see that. I don't see that being an issue. The problem is if oil prices stay at these levels for the next 5 years, of course, any euro bonds we have over the next 5 years, likely default risk becomes much higher from there. Any more questions? I think I've handled a lot of questions for now. Any questions? Yeah. Should the central bank allow the exchange rates converge and move towards a free floating exchange rate regime? I think if you look at the history of currencies globally, before the end of World War II, the whole world was on gold standard. So most currencies were on the gold standard. And after World War II, most of the European currencies left the gold standard because most European countries were damaged by World War II, so their economies were out of shape. So they went into this fixed currency arrangement with the US. They pegged their currencies to the US. And occasionally they are trading. But over time, the Americans felt uncomfortable because the Americans were the only ones who were left on the gold standard. So the Americans didn't like the arrangement. So the Americans left the gold standard. And so most currencies became fixed. And then you had the occasional devaluations here and there. What happened is that globally, because of financial flows, financial connections between Europe and America became very intense. So you find a lot of money moving across the transatlantic, US, UK, quite a lot of money moving across. So people felt, look, these fixed arrangements that will be devaluing every now and then won't necessarily work. Let's go to a floating exchange regime. And so in 1980s, most of the advanced countries moved to a floating exchange regime. Emerging markets, however, remain because of the stability, the implied stability that they had and then of course the fear of the impact of devaluation remained there. But with the Asian crisis in 1997, most emerging market currencies moved away. They didn't have the reserves to be able to defend those. You had to move to a floating regime. Now, for Nigeria, what's going to work for us? The question is, where are we? So for countries that have large financial flows with the rest of the world. So if you have what people say is, are you a large open economy? In other words, our financial flows between your economy and the rest of the world, are they very large? Like Japan, like South Korea, these countries have the amount of flows that go through this country is very large. So because those flows are very large, why would you want to defend your currency? You mean, take for instance today, if you look at the amount of trade that goes on between some countries, these guys are doing between $45 billion a day. Now, $45 billion a day, can the Nigerian Central Bank says, if you're a country, you don't, so that means you need to have much higher reserve levels than $45 billion to be able to keep your currency stable. So for Nigeria, Nigeria is not a large open economy in that sense. We are a small open economy, so we have some financial flows, but it's not that much. And you can just rationalize it. How much do we trade in our equity market every day? Just 5, 10, maybe $10 million a day. How much trade now? If we put it in a global sense, it's not. It doesn't necessarily sit well with our economic structure. However, should we not do floating? I mean, everybody says we should float. I mean, I think eventually all countries eventually end up floating. So, however, what do we need to do for us that works? We should have a mind float. A mind flow works for us, whereby kind of what we had before 2016. The currency float within the range you get, and anytime you face significant pressure, oil prices declines by 20%, and the pressure appears on your currency, you are not committed to any peg. You don't say, look, I'm in this level or nothing. You allow it to move. Once you allow it to move and it sets on a new level, then everybody stays on another level, and then you stay there. So the whole point is, it's not a textbook thing that is okay, let's go to floating, pure textbook floating, because there's also some institutional mechanics in Nigeria that doesn't allow you to do purely textbook floating. And one of that is the central bank has surrender rights on dollars. Nigeria's biggest export is crude oil exports. By law, all crude oil exports must be given to the central bank. So by default, central bank will always be the biggest supplier of dollars. So the central bank is always the biggest supplier of dollars. You can't have a pure play floating mechanism, because a floating mechanism works on the assumption that you have many buyers and many sellers. But if you now what we end up having is one big buyer and many tiny sellers. And in that kind of scenario, you can't have a free market, because effectively is what that one big buyer seller is saying that all of us will be doing. And so, which is why which is why the mind flow worked for us. But we struggled with it for 2 years, and then we came back to some semblance of a flexible system, and that worked. But as to whether a full float will work, I don't think we're institutionally ready for that. What I would say is, as always, is be flexible on the exchange rates. So anytime you see pressures, don't say it's here or nothing. We're not going to move anything. No, if you see pressures, you move. Because really, what's a flexible exchange rate? A flexible exchange rate says that, look, anywhere the currency goes, anywhere demand and supply is, I'll move. But in our own case, because we know supply is pretty much stuck with one guy, so anytime we see pressures, anytime we see unusual pressures, we can set a goal. If we see the pressures are something that we can handle, we should be willing to allow the currency move until we get to the point where our flows are large enough, and we've also built sufficient institutional mechanisms for people to hedge and defer or treat or deal with FX volatility. Then we can say we're floating. I mean, there's very good material out there I can share with you if you want, on how countries can transit very easily from a fixed regime to a floating regime. It's not a one-off thing. It's not something that you just say you are doing overnight. It's something that you get there. But you must have a commitment. Say, okay, maybe I'm going to become a floating exchange rate in 3 to 5 years. Before you get to a floating exchange rate, I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before I get there. But the problem with us is that the only time these conversations happen is when we're in trouble. And you can't be having those conversations when you're in trouble. You should have those conversations when things are normal. Looking at South Africa, how South Africa moved from fixed to floating, it was a project as well. They said, okay, we are going to target, say, maybe by 2025, we'll become a floating exchange rate economy. And then they'll make all the changes need to make before you become a full floating. Because floating, trust me, there's a point you get to if you have a large amount of, I mean, imagine if Nigerian capital markets were so large enough that daily transactions were in billions of dollars. I'm not talking 1, 2 billion, but like 20, 30 billion dollars. Central bank cannot hold the reserves to hold the currency. You can't. So ultimately, I think from the story I painted, all countries progress towards floating. It's just how you're able to arrange yourself to get there. we probably need to become more serious about it. But anytime we see pressure in the currency, we should be willing to let it go, because that commitment is what always puts us in trouble. Because it always means that once you're not moving, you then need to do so many other things to keep it steady. The ground has shifted under your feet, and it's always a very difficult period. The good news is this time around, the central bank they've done some more. Let's see if they are going to be willing to be able to do more, at least be able to manage it. But if they don't do it, then it doesn't make any difference. We'll still be in the same thing where we were in 2016. One more question. Somebody asking me, can you analyze Tinubu's opinion on printing more money as a way forward? Well, I don't know if this is a political discussion, but well, printing money in general, of course, the idea would work in countries, in advanced countries, they are doing that with quantitative easing. I think they can do that because they have the fiscal balance sheets to be able to do that. But in our own case already, the government is already borrowing from the CBN. They've already printed a lot. To get out of this now, we need to print, and inflation here is not 0 or 2%. In advanced countries where they're doing this, inflation is below 2%. So below 2%, I mean, there's a level of inflation that every country is okay with. IMF says between 3 to 5%. Countries should be okay if you have inflation around those levels. It shouldn't be much of a worry. If you have inflation around those levels, if you print money, you're not too worried, because yeah, even if it gives you inflation, you probably get to 2% or 3%. It's not something. When our own case, inflation is already 12%. You say you want to print, it means you're willing to tolerate much higher levels of inflation. The question is the populace willing to tolerate much higher levels of inflation? I don't think so. So that's why printing often, I mean, we've seen printing work in many African countries before, Zimbabwe, and the experience has always been high inflation. So you never really get out of it. Ghana as well, always results in high inflation. So it never always solves the problem. It just creates the do you think price of pharmaceutical period can be low, assuming there's an increase in production in health sector, considering announcements? Not too sure what this question, the angle that this question is going to. Assuming Nigeria is looking at moving away from oil revenue in 5 years, what things do you think we should start doing now that will aid that reality? If we wanted to move our economy from an oil economy in 5 years' time, the first thing we need to do is also we need to open up more sectors to private capital. Now, in Nigeria today, the major sectors that open the private capital are oil and gas to a limited extent, manufacturing. We have some other sectors in the economy that completely are run entirely by, or rather, mostly still being run by government agencies, transportation in particular. All our airlines, well, at least the biggest airlines are owned by government. Railway lines all owned by government, airports, ports, all largely owned by government agencies. So, I mean, if you're looking for a way to diversify, it's always to tie what sector do I see that needs private capital inflows, private capital to go into, that can go in there and expand production in those sectors. Those are the sectors, and once you have those sectors, those are the sectors that you typically diversify. And there are sectors away from oil, and anything away from oil will work. Agriculture, the problem with agriculture is always a very slow thing. I mean, countries that have successfully gotten or increased the productivity of agriculture, they spend years in getting there. So it's never an easy thing. Every country should do that because it should become at least self-sufficient in food production. But it's not an easy journey, and we have not dedicated the mental focus, because Nigerian agriculture today is largely rain-fed. Most countries that are serious agriculture are relying on irrigation. Nigerian agriculture is largely relying on seed varieties that are not as high yielding as possible. We're reliant on outdated techniques. Mechanization is very low. So because of that, it's often a struggle to, any progress you have is crude, it's subsistence type gains that, I mean, are easily frittered away as population. With population growth, those gains usually disappear because every day more babies are being born, and you need to do more to be able to feed those. So you need more than just 3%, 2 to 3% growth in agriculture to make it a viable sector from a diversification perspective. I think those are all the questions I have so far. If you have any questions, yeah, I can take from
Thank you, Wale, for the answers to those questions. We appreciate you for accepting our invite at that very short notice. So, for me, one question basically is the fact that you said we should increase exposure to dollar assets at a time like this. That is one of the major advice you give us local investors. But my question is, at the moment, the ability for the local investors to get dollar is quite a strenuous process. Like, for you to invest in Eurobond, for example, you have to do dollar transfer, and that has been quite stressful for local investors. So, are you saying there's no other way around this,
Okay.
like in terms of investment? What
Uh,
in the case where you can invest in
well,
dollar?
I mean, the best time to invest in dollars in Nigeria is always yesterday. That's the way I would say it, because I think one lesson I think we learned internally from the last crisis is in designing any portfolio from an investment perspective in Nigeria, always maybe at least a third of that portfolio, try to have exposure to USD, because you don't want it to be that it's when you're in a crisis that you now want to start looking for dollars. I mean, it's never going to happen, because every 3 to 5 years, something will happen in the external environment to impact oil prices, and we'll have to talk about the value of the naira again. So, and because of the current institutional reality whereby they're using a fixed peg exchange rate regime, so it means that every now and then there'll be pressure on that peg to move. If we're a floating system, under a floating exchange rate regime, maybe those problems go away. You just go with your normal, you just go and hedge yourself with NDFs or forwards or forward contracts. What asset classes do I think are best now? It's a very difficult environment because almost everything in Nigeria this year has lost money. The only thing I think that has maybe gained some money has been gold. If you bought new gold ETF, you probably up maybe 10. This year is difficult because fixed income people have lost money. Interest rates have pulled up in March, so you have to lose money. And the levels anyway are probably also too depressed if you're buying treasury bills. So it's been a very difficult environment this year. And if you're an individual investor and not an institutional investor and you didn't have USD exposure, I think it's pretty late now. It's pretty late now. I think the best thing you can probably just do is depend on your time horizon. So if you have a very long term horizon now, a lot of Nigerian stocks are trading at levels that I mean, give yes, Nigeria is probably going to go through a difficult period, but if you wait 2, 3 years out, you'll probably see a turnaround. Wait 2, 3. If you're able to wait 2, 3 years out, because I mean, GTB, a lot of Nigerian stocks are trading at levels that I mean, are crisis lows. You get, and these are companies that are still doing very, very good. They're still going to do very good at least over the near term. So if you're able to wait it out, you could buy stocks now. I mean, it's always good to buy at the bottom and then sit on it for 2, 3 years. But if you don't have that waiting power and you didn't buy dollars, I think it's a very difficult environment now. But if you think you can, if currency moves a bit, maybe you get some upside from there because if the naira moves, then the ETF also moves as well. So that's also something people could look at as well. I think now it's too late to make a decision now because we're in a crisis now. Oftentimes, this is always the worst time to be making investment decisions. Now, I think whatever you have, stay in your money market for now. Once things clarify, if you're confident enough, you can go into equities. The best time to buy dollars was yesterday, and it was before anytime before March. We bought out after March. You most likely be very difficult investment to make at this point in time. What else? Yeah. I think our the biggest problem in Nigeria is our investor universe is deeply constrained now. And usually, in time we're in crisis, those constraints also become a bit more obvious. If you could invest in US stocks, I think there are apps that also allow you to invest in US stocks as well. You should look at that option because, as I said, US stocks have come off a bit. Next 6 months to 1 year, by the time all the QE money goes into the system, most likely you'll find a bit of pickup from there, from that perspective. Unfortunately, however, you may have to be, because you're investing in Nigeria and you can't access FX, you may be forced to to pay a very high price for your FX, which will cap whatever gains you make on stocks in the US or investing outside Nigeria in USD investments. But for now, for institutional investors, I think everybody is just staying. I mean, this is not the time to make a decision. This is just the time to really just try as much as possible, conserve your cash, stay in cash as liquid as possible. If anything happens, you can respond to that. But for now is return of capital as against return on capital for now. So that's why you're finding investors are just generally staying in cash, staying liquid, just because, I mean, like I said, the best time to invest in USD was yesterday. If you didn't invest in it, it's a bit too late to be going into USD now. If you can't get Eurobonds as well, it's a bit of a difficult one, I guess. I guess people can invest in Eurobond funds as well, although the minimum levels are much higher now than where we were 2-3 months ago. Yeah, I mean, you also have quite a number of funds also raising Eurobond as well. So maybe you can also go to invest in Eurobond funds, but you have to source your dollars. But from a retail investor perspective, the options are very, very limited now, because if you didn't buy dollars, it's almost very difficult for you to find anything worthwhile. I mean, some people say go and look for a business. Now also the time to go and look for business ideas as well. Some of the very good companies today in the world were all founded during the last crisis. Now it's time to start thinking of what businesses you think will do very well and come up with that. Whereas for traditional stock market or traditional investing, now is probably a difficult time. But if you could invest in stocks if you have a long horizon, now is probably time to be buying stock if you have a very long horizon. Fixed income instruments, I think interest rates are levels that are not pricing in higher government borrowings, likely higher government borrowings, and also because of what the things the central bank has been doing in the last 6 months that have distorted rate levels. You find T-bill yields are depressed levels. I think pretty much. I'll say from a short-term perspective, it's probably late to be making investing now. Let's wait and see what happens. What's the government going to do? What's their deficit going to be like? What are their options? How do they plan to finance themselves out of this hole that they're in? I think let's wait and see that. Now it's probably not the time to be making any strong decisions, unless, of course, like I said, if you're a stock market guy and you believe in stocks, you should be buying stocks at these levels. If you have if you have a very long investment horizon, you can buy very good stocks at these levels, stay in them. 2-3 years down the line, these prices will be raised, as we saw in 2017, and you'll be better for it. Yeah. Hello? Hello?
Hello, thank you for the answer. Yeah. So we have some questions in the chat box for you. You could just look through.
Okay. With the valuation reduction in interest rate, we say export would increase that sector. Okay. Let me see. Okay, what apps or credible platforms permit access? I think there's Bamboo, which I know a lot of people use. I think there's another. I know Bamboo. A lot of people talk about Bamboo. Bamboo is one of them. I could send this after. I can't remember what the other one is. Then there's Trove with Trove. I think there's the ARM as well. So yeah, you have 2 apps. But I know Bamboo. Between Bamboo and Trove, I think you're probably sorted. Bamboo is like a Bamboo, yes. And I think there's a third one as well, but they all allow you access to US stock market. Bamboo, Trove, and Bamboo and Trove I do know. And then the third one I can't remember. What are your views on Nigerian banks? Nigerian bank valuations now are depressed levels. I think from a fundamental perspective, you would want to buy, if you're going into a crisis in Nigeria, you want to buy banks that have net long USD positions on their balance sheets, banks that are highly liquid because they're the only ones that can manage the volatility you're going to see in the interest rate environment, and banks that have very good grip on asset quality. So asset quality in the sense that what sectors are their loan books exposed to, and are those sectors resilient, or are those sectors resilient to the economic shocks you're going to see? So both the oil price shock as well as the FX shock you're going to see. And then who, of course, the quality of the counterparties or the quality of the borrowers they have in that loan book. Screening for banks that have net long USD positions. I think you probably have UBA. Sorry, I think you probably have GTB there, probably a $2 billion net long position. Other banks have much smaller positions, so I think a bit of concern as to whether they will be able to do much there. Banks that are liquid. Most Nigerian banks are highly liquid now. That's tier one banks, excluding tier two banks. Tier two banks are likely going to struggle because CR between CR, LDR, and liquidity ratio. I think a lot of tier two banks will really be tight for the cash. And the third thing is where are you exposed to? Some banks have, I mean, all banks in Nigeria have oil and gas loans. Probably now it's time to ring them and find out whether they are hedged. Those loans are hedged. I think GTB says all their loans are hedged at $50 a barrel for at least 24 months, or at least their own borrowers should be able to, their own oil and gas loan book should be able to hold on well. But for some other banks, I don't think that's the scenario. Some banks are hedged, partly hedged. So of course, in this kind of environment, many of those loan books will be under scrutiny for now. FX rates, of course, once you have a naira devaluation, loans in manufacturing, potentially loans in general commerce, some of these loans immediately you start seeing defaults on some of these loans. I mean, you add COVID as well. I mean, you probably find a lot of people being trapped in between and not being able to generate money to be able to pay those loans. So I think go for those banks that have very good grip on asset quality. Historically, they've always shown they're able to manage their loan books very well, and that's because they're lending to the very large corporates who are able to withstand whatever macro shocks. They also have, like I said, net long dollar positions, and they're also highly liquid as well, because only a highly liquid bank can really survive in the environment we're going ahead into. So I think if you tick off those three boxes, those three issues, those three items, very few banks screen for that. I think maybe GTB, most likely GTB will screen for that. And some of the other banks, it's a bit difficult to see where they are or how they're positioned. I'm generally wary of tier two banks because anytime we go through macro shocks, they always seem to be worse off because most likely they are exposed to lend to borrowers who may not be able to manage naira devaluations. And most likely they have liquidity, and most likely they are just barely net long USD or net short USD. So you don't really get much of the upside from any naira moves. So I think stick with banks that have those qualities. Generally, of course, GTB is being priced now at a point that is if you look at its price to book, it's priced at a point that I think is probably the lowest it's been, as with most banks as well. I would say my top pick for now would just be GTB. For the other bank, it's a bit touch and go because not too clear about what they've done with their oil and gas book, not too clear about where they are on a net long USD perspective. Yeah. What do I think of cryptocurrencies as an alternative investment window? Cryptocurrencies, I think for now, I think that market too is also suffering as well. So yeah, we're all suffering globally. So I mean, if you believe in it, sure, do your research very well. I won't say I'm an expert in cryptocurrency, so I won't offer opinion on that. Yeah, so somebody has responded: Bamboo, Trove, RiseVest, and Chaka. Those are apps to use for investing offshore. Yeah.
Hello, Wale. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Okay, that's good. Okay. I think you have a question. Okay. So those are all the questions for now. We are bringing the session to a close. So Ibrahim would be giving the closing remark at this point. Thank you so much, Wale. We really appreciate your presence. Thank you so much. Ibrahim, over to you, sir.
Okay. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Firstly, Wale, thanks so much for spending almost 1 hour, 35 minutes?
5 minutes.
I'm walking us through the topic. I think you addressed a lot of things. You've given us enough things to go back and think about and do a bit more research and you've been able to help us put all the things happening around us to proper perspective. I sincerely want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the knowledge you've shared with us. Not a lot of people are generous to allow us this kind of opportunity, because we know in the finance industry, everybody is trying to be as discreet as possible. But for giving us this opportunity to hear you talk to us is something we gladly appreciate. So thank you for that. And also to all the people who have joined, many people joined from Nigeria, from across, from different platforms. Thank you for sparing time out. Just to give you an indication, we'll have subsequent webinars where we're also talking to people within that same bracket in the industry to provide multiple perspectives such that we can use this period to plan and take position. You know, COVID is going to be over. We're going to get back to work. And then with all this information we're sharing, we can be better prepared. So I want to thank every one of you. And I want to thank Yinka. Yinka is on the research team of United Capital. Shakirat is with RMB. And the other team members who put this together, we sincerely appreciate you. And so on that note, I want to say thank you, Wale, and thank you all for joining and for giving us this opportunity. Yinka, back to you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Wale. And thank you to, as Abraham have said, we have more sessions like this in store. It's going to be more of a weekly routine, so just watch out. All our social media platform, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, WhatsApp status of your friend. You should get our updates in the coming days for the next session, and we will be glad to have you. Also, we welcome feedbacks. So as much as possible after us, kindly drop them. We'll be providing a link as to that. Hopefully we will share that round. So just give us suggestion on how we can improve on this. We implore everyone to stay safe, stay at home at this point of COVID-19. Yeah. So thank you so much as we bring this meeting to a close. Good night.